talent. So, at that point in the draft, Jace, we're looking for the guy with the highest ceiling we can possibly find. He's really gifted. We felt like he was the most talented guy on the board. He's got a really bright future. He works. He can dribble. He can pass. He can shoot. He's a high-level athlete. We know he's going to work. His skill set translates. When the physical growth catches up to his natural God-given ability, he's going to be a really good player. So, really high ceiling. Some risk in that, it's not a guy with a big body of work because he didn't play at the college level, but that's our job. Our job's not to play it safe. Our job's to go get the guy that has the talent that if he pans out, you're not going to get as a free agent, and nobody's going to trade him to you. So that's what we're trying to find.
When did you bring him in for the second workout? What particularly did you want to see there?
Honestly, we were down to a couple of guys. We wanted to get some markers in terms of, separation. And where the other guys that we were comparing him against, we had, 30 to 90 games on film that we could get back in the theater, watch film. We could talk to more, college coaches, a little bit more intel in terms of background research. With Anthony, it was just a matter of we wanted to make sure what we saw in the first workout was real. I mean, we all saw him play live. We saw him play game minutes, but it's just not the same. Whether we like to believe it or not, seeing a kid in an empty gym in an academy in Florida isn't the same as seeing him, play in the ACC tournament.
Do you have any idea how long it's going to be before you think he's ready to contribute?
No, I don't know. I mean, we're going to be patient, Joe. Honestly, the way we handled the draft, we liked Gary Trent a lot. He was on the board as well. We liked Anthony. We just felt like in terms of maximizing the tools at our disposal when it came to the draft, we weren't going to get Anthony at 37. We thought we could get back into the draft in the mid to late 30s and get Gary. So that was the best way to kind of double dip.
How much did you explore trading with Ben?
We did. We were trying, look for teams where 24 would get us an impact rotation guy into the trade exception. As you saw, I think tonight wasn't about players, existing players. Tonight was about the draft. This was an incredibly deep draft. It was something of a convoluted draft. I think when we looked at it, we had 1 through 24 right. Just some of the ordering was different. It wasn't this as chalky as some drafts are in terms of the order. There were a couple of upsets as far as our projections. But we were really aggressive leading up to the draft, but it's got to be a very specific fit. It's got to be a very specific guy in terms of skill set. And it's got to be a guy we believe can make an impact. So, tonight wasn't the night to do that. We've got 10 days till free agency. We've got early July. One of the things I've talked about, there's different ways, right? We thought tonight would have had to fit the Mason Plumlee model, right? Where we had the 23rd pick in the draft. We didn't love what we had at that selection, so we moved it for Mace. There were other examples. We got into early July. July 4th is when we made the trade for Rollo, right? We needed a big. We were patient, generated an opportunity, got Rollo. Years before that, that we had the room mid-level. We didn't just give it to the next available guy. We were patient. Early August, we got Mo Williams when he missed his market. So, we're going to have to be really judicious. We don't have a ton of tools at our disposal in terms of without conveying players on the roster, in terms of adding veteran help in the rotation. But we've got the next 2 weeks now, to kind of shift focus and address that. But I think league-wide tonight, what we saw was tonight was probably more about the draft exclusively than we've seen. I didn't see the very end of the second round because I came in here, but I don't think there was an impact trade in terms of players changing hands tonight. It was basically picks.
That surprise you?
We anticipated it going in based on the trade call volume. What guys were kind of shopping. It really wasn't players. Guys were looking to kind of either move up, move down, acquire additional picks. Last year I think we saw there were high-level guys that were clearly on the market, but the players pursuing them had the draft assets to acquire them, and the draft assets were critical in acquiring those players. I mean, they were a key component in the deal construction. Tonight, I think, I don't think the teams that were in the position to have the high-value picks were really teams that were hunting for players that could step in right away. Like I said, I think tonight was a really good draft, and I think people wanted to be keenly focused on the draft and coming away with young talent.
You envision Trent coming in and being able to play right away?
I hope so. One of the things with Gary, his pedigree in terms of Team USA, playing at Duke, he's McDonald's All-American. Physically, he's physically capable of playing in the NBA right away. His skill set translates. Big time shooter, physical defender. Look, he's going to have to get quicker in terms of guarding twos. He's probably going to guard up more right now, more the threes. Fight some threes, but. Look, we're all looking for shooting, and this is a guy that we think can step in right away and fill a void. How much or how little, Jason, that's going to be up to Terry. But I don't think we're going to need to feel as patient with Gary based on the body of work he brings to the table as we will be with Anthony.
But the shooting, you like the shooting the best with Trent.
Yeah. The shooting, the fact that physically he's capable of playing in an NBA game right now. We saw that when we watched him live. He's still very young, but I think much more mature in terms of the demeanor he brings to the court. He's got NBA pedigree, and like I said, playing in all those high-level events, on the AAU circuit, the Hoop Summits, the Team USA events, the McDonald's games. He's been on track for this his whole life. You're talking about the 8th-ranked high school player in America. So, like I said, I think he translates quicker. We're not going to hold Anthony back, not unlike, Zach. Right. I mean, we thought Zach was going to be up for a redshirt year last year. He was a futures talent play. He impressed Terry and the coaches enough where they integrated him sooner than we thought. But from a front office standpoint, we're not compelling anybody to play these guys right away. It's a matter of how Terry feels like he can utilize them.
I know the lines are getting blurred more and more in the NBA, but is Anthony more of a 2 or is he more of a 1?
Combo. I think now you probably look more guard. I think when he gets on the floor, it'll initially be more as off the ball, which is clearly a luxury we have when you have guys like Dame, CJ, and Evan Turner. But his ability to handle and pass leads us to he can be a big point guard at some point, a big athletic point. But again, having played at IMG for a year as opposed to playing a high level of college, his learning curve is going to be steeper, than it would be. And and we've seen it. I mean, the learning curve for point guards is just steeper in our league right now.
Neil, did you have any conversations with Paul Allen before selecting either of these players?
Oh, of course. We've been talking to Paul for weeks.
Was there anything that he said about either Anthony or about Gary that stood out? I mean, did he like one player more than the other?
No, I think one of the things look, you guys, probably some of you guys have been around Paul a lot longer than I have. I'm not looking at you, Dwight. But, look, Paul loves the draft. He loves the future. He loves looking to the future. He loves talent. He always wants us to be aggressive in the draft. And, we're really lucky to have an owner that, wasn't content with just picking at 24. He wanted to jump back into the draft. He gave us, full authority to make another move to go get another guy we liked relative to our board, relative to where we had to get him. So, it's fun being in the room with Paul on draft night because there's a real joy that accompanies the unknown for him in terms of what players can become. So, look, when you do trades, when you do free agents, there are no quantities. That's more business. It's more science. This is more art. And I think Paul takes great joy in being a part of that.
What are the specifics of the trade to acquire Gary Trent? I saw 2 future seconds.
Yeah, 2 future seconds and some cash.
Are those seconds, do they have years attached to them, or are they just?
They do. It's the Miami 2021 second, and next year's it's more favorable of Lakers and Minnesota's second.
Neil, could you speak to IMG Academy? And I mean, not familiar with them, what kind of schedule they play, what kind of a system do they have? Are they developing players there?
Right.
What do they do?
Well, no, it's a great multi-part question. So IMG is a really unique situation. I think we all know it started out more as tennis, and golf, and they branched into team sports, football, soccer, multiple basketball teams. So, obviously Anthony was there as a postgraduate. So very, very bright kid, had already graduated from high school, had qualified to go to college. Instead of going to Louisville, he spent the year there. So it's a unique situation. If you've ever been there, it's nothing but gyms and fields and weight rooms. And, the kids go to classes, they train in the afternoon, They have access to things from a nutrition and training standpoint you wouldn't get at a normal prep school, just an academic-based prep school. They were very lucky this year. They had John Mahoney there at IMG. John is a longtime assistant coach of John Beeline. So he ran the Michigan, I will also say Lemoyne basketball system, which really develops players in terms of passing, IQ, feel, playing without the ball, playing as one unit, moving without the basketball. So, instead of Anthony, who's just clearly so gifted that normally in a situation like that would just have the ball in his hands, right, and be in attack mode, it gave Anthony a multi-game sample and practices of how to play within a system and play and conform to others without just dominating with your gifts relative to the players you're playing against. So, like I said, I think he's more advanced than a lot of guys that would come from a prep school, high school environment because he's playing for a guy with a lot of years of college experience, a great coach, a guy who has coached, John Mahoney has coached multiple years with a Hall of Fame coach like John Beeline, that all of his teams, as we know, play the right way. So I think that advances things for Anthony as well. The schedule that they play is a national schedule. I mean, they travel, they play Montverde, they're playing all the best postgraduate prep schools. And, I think they even play some of the, junior colleges and events. The nights that I was down there, they were playing another local high school prep school. So, one of the things that's interesting when you evaluate Anthony, you couldn't do it relative to, we always talk about, well, he did this against this team, or he had 30 against this team. Really, you had to really evaluate him just based on him in a vacuum and what he does on the floor, without regard really to the level of competition. Not unlike, Dwight, a lot of the times when you're evaluating international players, at a younger age. You can't base it on the level of competition as much as what they bring to the game.
When did he kind of pop on your radar?
Pardon me?
When did he kind of pop on your radar?
So, I mean, look, he's been a guy everybody's been tracking, through high school. He clearly would have been a high priority guy for scouts had he gone to Louisville. Like I said, he was on our radar early. Clearly, we've had some success with guards in the draft. We liked them. Steve Rosenberry and Joe Cronin saw him earlier in the year. As we saw our pick get later and later relative to the success we were having in February, Bill Branch and I got on a plane, got down to IMG to see him down there. Actually, ironically, on the same trip where we saw, Duke at Georgia Tech. I mean, we saw Duke multitude of times, obviously, but the trip late in the year was Duke at Tech, followed by, IMG, to see Anthony. And then, his agents were terrific working with us, Bobby Petria and his group, as far as accommodating us, not only to get him in early, but knowing that we were legitimate with our interests, that they were willing to get the kid to fly all the way, back in. I mean, and when we saw him the second time, Jace, you asked about the workout, it was his third workout in 3 days. He'd been in Orlando, went to LA the next day, and got to us the next day. So it was just, a lot of guys might have pulled the plug, that late in the process, the week of the draft. And, I think we had a very transparent relationship with them. They knew we weren't just doing it from a due diligence standpoint, that there were certain benchmarks we wanted to see him hit and wanted to be around him a little more. And that kind of, solidified it for us.
So with his lack of resume against other elite programs, Anthony, how do you gauge in the interviews with him specifically his ability to compete on a very big stage and go from prep to playing in the pros?
Right. Well, and that's the projection. And I think, you're right. There's going to be a culture, shift for him. Again, not unlike some of the younger European players that, that we were drafting years ago that were playing junior teams, for Anthony, I think he'll get it. He's basically the age of a college freshman, still young, but the age of a college freshman. But a lot of the guys that are entering the league this year are his contemporaries. So, look, when you play, on the Under Armour circuit, you play EYBL and those, those levels, you're around all these guys. So I don't think Summer League is going to be as big of an adjustment with the young guys. It's going to be walking to a gym and suddenly practicing with Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum. A guy you're probably playing on 2K is going to be a big jump for him, as opposed to the guys that went to the high majors, that played in conference tournaments in front of 20,000 people on national television. He may be a deer in the headlights for a little bit, but, we know that he's a confident kid. He's a worker. He's going to get better. And I also have great confidence in guys like Dame and CJ and the guys we have on our roster that, have done an incredible job mentoring younger players and embracing them. We've all seen kind of what's happened with Nurk, here, who once he got here, the job that Damian did in terms of making that transition easier for him into the culture that we built.
Was there a moment with Anthony where you were like, that's my guy? Is there anything that sticks out?
I think everyone that saw him play live were excited. It doesn't take a lot to figure it out. Again, it comes to talent, right? This was not a need pick. This was a pick as far as who had the highest ceiling. And I think when you watch film on him, when you watch him play live, when you saw him in the gym here, there are things that he can do that can't be replicated by a lot of guys in this draft. And he just needs to get physically strong enough to do it against, as you said, against NBA competition, and to do it more consistently.
Neil, you talked back a while ago after the season ended about adding veteran players, and are you aware that there might be some reaction? You're not adding an experienced college player here, you're adding one of the youngest players in the draft. How do you answer those expectations and the way it turned out?
Well, and Jace asked, that's what the draft's for. The draft is the draft, and free agency and trades are free agency and trades. But the draft is about acquiring talent, long-term talent. And, eventually when that talent blossoms, you hope that those players become assets, and then you can make a decision. When we were at the Clippers, we kept drafting and drafting and drafting, and suddenly we had this large group of really talented young players that we converted into an established veteran. So, trade pieces are only so good as their value in the marketplace. And they have to have value to us before they can have value to others. So, like I said, I think when you looked at what happened tonight, guys flipped picks, people moved up, people moved down. Tonight was about the draft for pretty much every team in the league. And now, like I said, we'll shift our focus. We have roster spots available. We didn't invade any of our tools in terms of trade exceptions or taxpayer mid-levels, and we'll be aggressive going out into the market. But I don't want to confuse. Tonight was not about getting guys that can step in right away, and I don't want, like I said, a question about Gary to think that's going to supersede us trying to go build the bench and build the rotation with veteran playoff-tested players. Tonight was about the draft. And anyone, by the way, that thinks that they're going to find a guy with the 37th pick that's going to step in and play on a 49-win playoff team ends up with a guy that's out of the league in a year.
So in that regard, without a lot of trades that involved current players, do you feel that changes the relative market value of your trade exceptions going into free agency?
I don't know. Like I said, it was not the trade exceptions are tools. What we're hoping is, look, clearly we're looking for wings. We're looking for perimeter players. There were a lot of wings drafted in the top 35 tonight. So what you're hoping is that, as the dust settles from the draft and teams wake up with positional redundancies, maybe they're reprioritizing their younger players over veterans on their roster, that we can re-engage those teams now that it's not just speculative as far as what they were going to get with their pick, but the reality of what's on their roster. And what we're trying to do, you're trying to find a partner that's going in a different direction than we are. Like I said, we're trying to bolster the roster and build the rotation that can compete more in April and May. We don't need a lot of guys for that, but we need a couple. And like I said, the tools we have now are the same tools we had absent the 24th pick in the draft earlier this evening.
Couple more, we're gonna wrap it up.
Come on, Jamie, you got something.
I'm just trying to get my quotes.
It was a little off topic here. Will Zach play at Summer League?
Yep, absolutely. All right, so our guys have been in working out already. So, we had too many camps, and then our guys were in every day working out, all our young guys. So, but he'll absolutely play Summer League. Yeah.
I don't think you've been asked this yet, but did you talk to Gary Trent Sr. at all? I mean, with him being with Junior, obviously his dad having played there, kind of talk about the family legacy with the Blazers.
Really, this was done in a vacuum. The fact that Gary Sr. Played, I think that's helped Gary Trent Jr.'s growth in terms of accelerating it, and I think it'll demystify that, and he'll clearly know where to look for houses in Lake Oswego. But other than that, look, we drafted Gary Trent Jr. you know, and it's great, you know, that there's some, you know, some lineage here, but that really wasn't a factor. It really didn't matter, you know, for us.
Neil, when Anthony was here the second time, he said one of the things that stood out with you guys is that you guys really tried to get to know who he was. What did you find in that process when you were talking with him?
You know, some of the stuff we had gotten, John Mahoney and I are friends. He's very close with Steve Rosenberry. You know, we went down to IMG because we have the same history with Coach Beeline. And, you know, he's a very quiet kid. He's a very bright kid, really nice kid. I think a little bit, you know, protected. He's got two great parents, so I think he was a little sheltered. And then even more so, you know, it's really a bubble at IMG. So to your point, like it's not the life experience you're going to get on a college campus. So it took a little bit more to, you know, kind of break down the walls. You know, it's intimidating. You go out to dinner, you know, and lunch with, you know, 5 front office guys as a young kid. And we had him in, Jace, very early. I think we were his second workout. So I don't think he'd been numbed by the process yet or kind of knew, you know, how it ran. So I think it was different for him. So, John had said, look, the more comfortable you get with him, the more he's going to open up. And with that, I think it becomes familiarity. And we wanted to be around him a little bit more. So, you know, I think what we learned was he's a very quiet kid, but there's a quiet fire there about the competitive nature to him. You know, Coach Pitino called me and raved about him that, you know, look, when the lights come on, you know, he's as good as any player I've ever recruited and might have a higher ceiling than any player I ever recruited. And, you know, just because he doesn't make a big show of it, I think one of the coaches said, he's all bite, no bark, which I thought was a really interesting way to describe him. You know, that when he's out there playing, he's playing for blood, but he's just such a sweet, nice kid. He doesn't feel the need to show everybody how hard he's competing with the histrionics and, you know, and the gestures and all the talking. I mean, he just goes and plays.
The second workout, we got to see a little bit, and the Barford kid was able to kind of back him down. Did that give you a little pause?
Yeah, I think Jalen Barfield could back down half the league. No, but when you talk about it, that was why we brought him in, and I think you wrote it. I mean, that's why. I mean, he's a senior. He's a man, and he's a really tough guy, and he's a good player. And you know, I think it was interesting. We all looked at Anthony. I mean, he was done at that point. I mean, he was exhausted. You know, forget about the fact that he probably had 17 workouts. He'd done 3 in a row, and he's being asked to come in again. And I think mentally he thought he was going to get on a plane from LA and go back to his family. You know, and again, not a kid that, like in college, not used to traveling as much. Right now he's on and off airplanes, and he's in LA, back to Orlando, back to LA. And so I think he was really tired. And we didn't care what the result was in terms of the action so much as was he willing to fight. So it didn't matter. I mean, he was going to get backed down by a guy that outweighed him by 30 pounds and was 5 years older than him and had played in the SEC and played at a junior college. But, you know, what we wanted to see was how much fight was there in him, as tired as he was, as run down as he was, right? As probably numb to the process as he was becoming, was he still willing to fight?
Okay, we'll wrap it up there. We'll be back in here.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you Monday.